Buckle up, folks, because today we're diving headfirst into the wild world of Judges chapters 9 through 12.
Ooh, yeah, we're talking power struggles that would make even the most hardcore Game of Thrones fan blush.
You got that right. And we're not stopping there. We're going to untangle promises with consequences that'll make you rethink every pinky swear you've ever made.
Seriously, folks,
Up.
this is some intense biblical drama.
And to add even more fuel to the fire, we're bringing in not one, not two, but three different Bible translations.
Oh, yeah, the King James Version, the NIV, and to spice things up, the Old Greek translation.
Because why settle for one perspective when you can have a whole buffet of interpretations?
Exactly. It's like having multiple narrators whispering different versions of the same story in your ear, each one emphasizing something a little bit different.
Totally. It's like watching the same movie with three different pairs of glasses. But let's not get too abstract here. Let's dive into the story, starting with Abimelech.
Ah, yes, Abimelech.
Gideon's son, the one who goes full-on power-hungry, manipulating his family in Shechem to basically make himself king.
Classic power grab, right? The kind we've seen play out time and again throughout history.
Oh, absolutely. But what gets me is how the Old Greek translation really emphasizes the brutality of his actions, especially when he decides to, murder his own brothers to secure his claim to the throne.
It's chilling, right? A stark reminder that power often comes at a terrible, terrible cost.
Absolutely. Talk about family drama taken to a whole new level. But there's a twist, right?
Always a twist with these biblical stories.
One brother, Jotham, manages to escape the massacre. And he doesn't just run and hide. No, he comes back with a vengeance. He delivers this scorching parable, comparing Abimelech to, get this, a thorny bramble bush that somehow becomes king.
Ouch. Not so subtle dig at his brother's ill-gotten power, right?
Right. But Jotham's parable isn't just a clever insult. It's also like a warning, a prophecy of things to come.
Absolutely. Remember, in ancient Israel, words held immense power, especially pronouncements and vows. People believed they could actually shape reality.
Whoa. Deep stuff. So Jotham cursing Abimelech, it's almost like he's setting a cosmic trap.
Exactly. It's like he's invoking a higher power to bring about his brother's downfall. It's not just sibling rivalry. It's this epic battle of words and processes.
And speaking of downfall, Abimelech's demise is, pretty dramatic.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about dramatic.
He gets fatally wounded by a millstone, the thing you used to grind grain?
A millstone.
Right. Yeah, dropped by a woman, no less. Imagine the humiliation, especially back then.
Oh, I can only imagine. The KJV really lays it on thick, emphasizing Abimelech's pride in his final moments.
Yeah.
He even begs his armor-bearer to kill him so he doesn't die by a woman's hand.
Oh, yeah. Talk about adding insult to injury. So what does all this tell us about Abimelech?
Well, on the surface, it's a story about ambition gone wrong.
Right.
This thirst for power that ultimately consumes him. But it also fits into a larger pattern we see throughout Judges.
A pattern?
Yeah. It's like this cycle of sin, punishment, repentance, and then finally deliverance. We see it again with Tola and Jair, who judge Israel peacefully for a while.
Yes. Tola and Jair. Brief moment of peace before the storm.
Exactly. But then the people, they just can't help themselves. They fall right back into idol worship, sparking, divine consequences. It's like humanity hitting the repeat button on bad behavior.
It really is. But this whole cycle, it sets the stage for our next main character, Jephthah. Yeah. Now, he comes from a completely different background. This guy, he's the son of a harlot, an outcast, rejected by his own family.
Wow. Talk about starting life with the deck stacked against you.
Right. Yet when the Ammonites start breathing down Israel's neck, guess who they turn to for help?
Jephthah.
Bingo. It's like, hey, remember that guy we shunned? Yeah, maybe he can save our butts now.
It's amazing, isn't it, how in times of desperation, we often find ourselves turning to those we've previously ignored or dismissed.
It really makes you think. But Jephthah, he's not just some brave warrior. This guy's smart. Before he agrees to lead the Israelites against the Ammonites, he strikes a deal with the elders.
Oh, a shrewd negotiator. I like it.
He makes sure they guarantee his leadership before he lifts a finger.
Smart move. He's not just charging into battle. He's securing his power base.
Exactly. And the Old Greek translation, it paints this picture of him as not just capable, but confident, even a little eager to prove himself.
I bet anyone who's ever felt underestimated can relate to that, right?
Yeah.
That burning desire to show everyone what you're really made of.
Yeah, totally. It's that classic underdog story. But here's where things take, a tragic turn.
Uh-oh, I sense a butt coming.
Jephthah, desperate for victory, makes a vow to God. If he wins the battle against the Ammonites, he'll sacrifice whatever comes out of his house first.
Whoa, talk about a high-stakes gamble.
Right. And here's where understanding the ancient Israelite culture around vows is crucial. A vow wasn't just a casual promise. It was a sacred oath made directly to God.
Yeah, breaking a vow back then. It was like inviting divine wrath upon yourself, maybe even your whole community.
No kidding. It adds this whole other layer of weight to the story. So Jephthah, he wins the battle, returns home victorious, and guess who comes out to greet him?
Don't tell me. His daughter.
His daughter, his only child.
Oh, man. That's just heartbreaking.
It really is. And the way the different translations portray Jephthah's reaction, it's fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more.
Well, the KJV, it goes all in on the drama. Alas, my daughter, and I am undone. It's like you can hear Jephthah's world crumbling around him.
Raw grief. I get it. But what about the NIV? How does it handle this moment?
Well, the NIV, it's a bit more restrained. It describes Jephthah as deeply distressed and torn. It's subtle, but it highlights this inner conflict he's wrestling with.
The conflict between his love for his daughter and his obligation to fulfill his vow.
Exactly. It's like his mind is trying to process this impossible situation he's created.
It really is a tough situation, right? And this tension, this battle between duty and love, it's what makes Jephthah's story so relatable, even thousands of years later.
It's like a cautionary tale,
Yeah.
Think before you speak, especially when the stakes are so high.
Especially when you're talking about a vow to God, right?
Yeah.
Remember, we're talking about a culture steeped in religious beliefs, fear of divine retribution. That was a real thing.
Right. Breaking a vow, it wasn't just about letting someone down. It was like defying the will of God himself.
Exactly. And people believed that God's favor, it rested on the obedience of the entire community. Any transgression, any broken vow could lead to, collective punishment.
So Jephthah's dilemma, it wasn't just a personal problem. It was like the fate of the entire nation rested on his shoulders.
Exactly. It's
Wow.
heavy stuff, right? And Jephthah's daughter, she grew up in this world too. A world where faith and duty, they were everything.
It's hard to imagine having that level of faith, that acceptance, knowing what's coming. But she wasn't just blindly obeying, was she?
No, not at all. Remember, she asks for 2 months to mourn with her friends before fulfilling the vow.
That's a pretty powerful request, don't you think? Especially given the circumstances.
Absolutely. It suggests that even within the constraints of her culture, she still had a voice, a degree of agency. She chooses how to spend her final days and emphasizes those female bonds, the importance of communal grieving.
It reminds me that even in those ancient patriarchal societies, women found ways to support each other, to create their own spaces of strength and solidarity.
Exactly. And speaking of strong woman, we can't forget the one who, literally brought the house down on Abimelech.
Ah, yes, the woman with the millstone. Often relegated to a footnote in his story, but her actions, they were pivotal.
Right. Here's this tyrannical leader, this would-be king, and he's taken down not by a mighty warrior, but by an ordinary woman who seizes an opportunity.
It's like a biblical David and Goliath, only in this version, David is a woman wielding, a kitchen utensil.
And the fact that Abimelech is so humiliated to be killed by a woman that he begs his armor-bearer to finish him off. It speaks volumes about the gender dynamics of the time, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's like he couldn't bear the thought of being outdone by a woman, even in death.
Talk about a fragile ego. But beyond the drama, I think it's important to remember that these women, they weren't just acting on impulse. They were operating within a complex social and religious structure, a system that often marginalized them, silenced their voices.
Right. So their acts of courage and defiance, they become even more significant, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's like they're finding ways to navigate a system that wasn't designed for them to succeed.
They're pushing back against the boundaries, claiming their agency in a world that tries to deny it.
Exactly. And while Jephthah's daughter and the woman with the millstone, they offer these dramatic examples of female strength, there are other quieter ways that women exert their influence in judges.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about now, Deborah. The prophetess and judge who leads Israel to victory over the Canaanites.
Yes. Deborah, a true force of nature, right. Shears disputes, delivers God's judgments, and rallies the troops for battle.
She's like, hold my beer, I got this. Completely shatters any preconceived notions about women being passive or subservient.
Right. In a world dominated by men, she stands out as this beacon of female leadership and authority.
She's like paving the way for other powerful women in the Bible, like Esther or Judith. They all prove that women can not only survive, but thrive in positions of power.
Absolutely. And let's not forget Samson's mother. Even though we don't know her name, she plays a pivotal role in his story. It's her faith and guidance that set him on his path, even if it's a path filled with its own twists and turns.
He's like the unsung hero behind the strongman. It's a reminder that mothers, even in ancient times, they had this incredible impact on shaping the destinies of their children and, well, by extension, on the course of history itself.
Exactly. And that's what makes exploring these women's stories so crucial. It adds a whole new layer to our understanding of the Book of Judges. It's not just about battles and betrayals and power struggles. It's also about the resilience, wisdom, and quiet strength of women who navigated a world that often tried to silence them.
So we've got Abimelech's dramatic rise and fall. Then Jephthah, a leader forged in rejection, who makes a vow that leads to, well, unimaginable tragedy. But after all the bloodshed and drama, we're left with this sense of, I don't know, maybe hope? A glimmer of light shining through the cracks?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Even in the midst of all this chaos and violence, the Book of Judges, it doesn't shy away from showing us those glimmers of hope, those moments of courage, compassion, and the unwavering strength of the human spirit.
But the cycle of Judges, it doesn't end there, does it?
No, it doesn't. After the conflict with the Ephraimites, we see this pattern continue. A series of less well-known figures step onto the stage: Ibzan, Elon, and Abdon. They might not have the same name recognition as Gideon or Samson or Jephthah, but their stories, they offer these glimpses into the ongoing challenges faced by the Israelites.
It's like they're representing those periods of relative peace and stability, those moments when things seem to be going right, but then, boom, something happens and the cycle starts all over again.
Exactly. The cyclical pattern, it's not just a random plot device. It's key to understanding the overall message of the Book of Judges. It highlights the Israelites' constant struggle to remain faithful to God, their tendency to fall back into old habits, and the need for divine guidance and intervention.
It's like they're constantly testing the boundaries, pushing their luck, and then facing the consequences.
Yeah. And this pattern, it's not unique to the ancient Israelites, is it? It reflects a very human tendency to stray from our values, to make mistakes, to face the repercussions of our choices. It's a reminder that even those who strive for righteousness, well, they're prone to faltering.
It's humbling, isn't it? No matter how hard we try, we're all capable of messing up, of making choices we regret. But the Book of Judges also suggests that there's always the possibility of redemption, of getting back on track, even after we've strayed.
Absolutely. And this message of hope, it's woven throughout these stories, even amidst the violence and betrayal. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always the potential for renewal, for transformation.
It's like a glimmer of light shining through the cracks of a broken world.
It is right. It's this kind of push and pull between, well, the darkness and the light that makes the Book of Judges so fascinating.
It's like they're holding up a mirror to our own messy human nature, showing us that we're all capable of both great and terrible things. But you know what's been really sticking with me throughout this whole deep dive? It's the women of Judges.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, they might not always be the main characters, but they're definitely not just sitting on the sidelines. They make some pretty bold moves and shake things up in some pretty unexpected ways.
Absolutely. It's like they're these hidden figures driving the narrative forward.
Exactly. And we already talked about Jephthah's daughter, right? But her story, it's about so much more than just obedience.
Right. There's this depth to her character, a quiet strength.
Like when she asks for those 2 months to mourn with her friends before fulfilling the vow, it's like she's taking control of the one thing she still has power over. Her own grief, her own farewell.
It's a powerful statement, right? A subtle act of defiance in a situation where she has very little control.
It's like she's saying, my life might be out of my hands, but my death, my grief, that's mine.
Exactly. And it also highlights those strong bonds between women, the way they support each other, especially in times of crisis. It's a reminder that sisterhood isn't just some modern invention. It's been around for centuries.
And speaking of powerful women, we can't forget the one who, well, she basically took down a tyrant with a single household item.
Ah, yes. The woman with the millstone. She's often portrayed as a minor character, but her actions have major consequences.
Right. Think about it. Abimelech, this self-proclaimed king, this guy who was so power-hungry he murdered his own brothers. He's ultimately defeated not by some great warrior, but by a woman who sees an opportunity and takes it.
It's a pretty epic takedown, wouldn't you say?
Totally. It's like she's saying, hey, you don't need a sword to topple a tyrant. Sometimes all you need is a well-aimed kitchen utensil.
And the fact that Abimelech is so humiliated to be killed by a woman that he begs his armor bearer to finish him off, that really says a lot about the way men viewed women back then.
It's almost like he couldn't handle the thought of a woman being the cause of his downfall. It's like, come on, dude, talk about a fragile ego.
But beyond the drama, it's important to remember that these women, they weren't just acting on impulse, right? They were operating within this rigid social structure, a system that often silenced them, pushed them to the margins.
Right. So their acts of courage, their defiance, it becomes even more powerful when you consider the context.
Exactly. It's like they're finding ways to crack the system, to carve out their own space in a world that's trying to contain them.
Okay, so we've got Jephthah's daughter and the woman with the millstone. Pretty dramatic examples of women taking charge. But there are other, quieter ways that women exert their influence in Judges, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about Deborah, the prophetess and judge, who leads Israel to victory over the Canaanites.
Deborah. Now, she's a true icon. A woman in a position of power in a time when that was almost unheard of.
She's like the ultimate example of female leadership in the Bible.
And for good reason, right. She's not afraid to speak her mind, to challenge the status quo, to lead the charge into battle.
Right. She's this powerful figure. But she's also a reminder that women's leadership doesn't always have to be loud or flashy. Sometimes it's about wisdom, discernment, quiet but unwavering strength.
And speaking of quiet strength, can we talk about Samson's mother for a minute? We don't even know her name, but she plays a pretty crucial role in his story.
Absolutely. She's the one who receives the divine message that her son will be a Nazirite, set apart for a special purpose.
Right. It's like she's the guiding force, the unsung hero behind the strong man.
It's a reminder that mothers, even in ancient times, they have this incredible influence not just on their children, but on the course of history itself.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Judges, I think it's important to remember that it's not just about epic battles and political intrigue. It's about those smaller stories, those moments of courage and resilience, especially from the women who often get overlooked.
Well said. It's about looking beyond the surface, digging deeper, and finding those hidden gems of wisdom and inspiration that can still speak to us today.
Exactly. So to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this journey through the world of Judges. We hope you've enjoyed exploring these ancient stories, these timeless struggles, these glimpses into the human heart.
And remember, folks, even in the most familiar tales, there are always new discoveries to be made, new perspectives to consider, new layers of meaning to uncover. So keep digging, keep questioning, and keep those conversations going.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, happy deep